On the 15th of November 2000, a young British couple embarked on the journey of a lifetime in the vast Australian outback. Chosen for its rugged landscapes and vast emptiness, it was a time to enjoy each other whilst exploring in their trusty orange camper van. But the journey that they started together would end with only one of them returning home. Hello and welcome back to Behind the Crime with me, Kaybon, here every Monday with a new video. Today's case is one that's puzzled me for a long time, just due to some inconsistencies in the case and some things that you hear that you think this just doesn't add up somewhere. So I thought I'd share this one today and get everybody's opinion on it, what you think about what happened and who you think is responsible, etc. So let's get straight into the video. Peter Marco Falconio, born on the 20th of September 1972, was the third of four sons in a family who lived in Hepworth, West Yorkshire, England. In 1996, he started a relationship with Joanne Lees after meeting her in a local nightclub. Lees soon began living with him in the following year in Brighton, where Falconio was studying at Brighton University. Joanne Lees was born on the 25th of September 1973. She lived her first 11 years with her mother Jenny because her mother and father had separated. Her mother had remarried a man called Vincent, who already had a son named Sam, and the new family of four lived in Huddersfield, Yorkshire. During high school and later studies, she had several part-time jobs as a barmaid before securing a job at her local Thomas Cook travel agency, before the couple took short trips to Italy, Greece and Jamaica. From 1998, the couple had planned a trip to Thailand, Singapore and Australia, though recent news of the backpacker murders, Port Arthur killings and Childers Palace backpackers hostel fire that had made their families quite anxious. On the 15th of November 2000, the couple departed, travelling through Nepal, Singapore, Malaysia, Thailand and Cambodia. Lees had her traveller's checks and return tickets stolen from here. By the 16th of January 2001, they'd arrived in Sydney on a working holiday visa, and Joanne then job hunted, finally securing work at the Dymox bookstore on George Street. After 5 months in which the couple had enjoyed Sydney's nightclub scene, Peter purchased a car for the next stage of their travel plan, a road trip from Sydney to Melbourne, Adelaide, Darwin and Brisbane. In June of that year, Peter and Joanne set off on their driving trip around Australia in their 30-year-old orange VW combi van from Sydney, travelling through Canberra, Melbourne, Adelaide, Port Pirie, Coober Pedy and Alice Springs. On July the 14th, 2001, the tourists attended the Camel Cup in Alice Springs. Peter visited an accountant and Joanne used the internet before they continued their journey north up the Stuart Highway in the afternoon. At around 7:30 on the evening of Saturday the 14th of July 2001, Peter and Joanne were travelling on the Stuart Highway bound for the Devil's Marbles in their orange combi. Peter was driving and Joanne sat next to him in the passenger seat. The two had been conscious of a car that had been following them since they stopped at a roadhouse in Barrow Creek, and they were expecting to be overtaken. However, when the vehicle, a white Toyota four-wheel drive with a green canopy, drew alongside, the driver gestured excitedly at them to pull over. Peter stopped the van and went to speak with the man, who had pulled off the road ahead of them. The man explained he'd been seeing sparks shooting out from the van's exhaust. As the two went to the rear of the vehicle to investigate, Joanne moved into the driver's seat ready to rev the engine. She then heard a loud bang from the rear of the van, and moments later the man was at the window brandishing a silver handgun. The gunman climbed into the van and secured Joanna's hands behind her back with black cable ties. She fought to not let the man tie her feet or tape her mouth. She was then dragged to the Toyota, during which she noticed the gunman's dog. But fearing rape, and while the man was distracted with what she thought was now Peter's body, Joanne was able to work herself through a small window into the rear portion of the vehicle, and from there she was able to make an escape. Joanne says that she hid herself in a bush, curled up tightly, and pulled her clothing over her skin to keep it from being reflected in a flashlight beam. She was able to stay hidden from the man and the red heeler Australian cattle dog at his side, and remained in the bush for 5 hours, when she finally felt he was gone and she could get help from the next passing vehicle. The gunman searched for Lees before leaving, passing nearby 3 times, but she managed to stay hidden before she finally ran out to the road and flagged down a road train driver at 12:35 a.m, who, with his co-driver, took her back to Barrow Creek. The Alice Springs police were called around 1:30 a.m. They arrived to collect evidence and testimonies at around 4:20 a.m, and they, now accompanied by the road train driver, commenced the search for Peter, the Toyota, and the gunman. At 7 a.m, they found the couple's van several kilometres down the road from where Joanne said the incident occurred, and where the only evidence of Peter was soaked into the asphalt, a single bloodstain. Peter was nowhere to be found. Police then called in Aboriginal trackers, known for their superb hunting skills utilising intense observation. After hours at the scene, the trackers saw no evidence that Peter had even exited the car, much less walked away from the area. Additionally, according to the trackers, there was no sign of Joanne having hid in the bush for the length of time that she claimed. This statement was based on the lying of grass and the midwinter temperatures that would have resulted in hypothermia, possibly frostbite, for any human, especially taking into consideration the clothing that Joanne was wearing. It was also odd that the would-be abductor, especially with a dog by his side, was unable to find Joanne's hiding place. But police believed Joanne's story, and they were intent on making an arrest. Police were hopeful that the release of the CCTV footage would lead to the person shown coming forward to remove themselves from suspicion. When this did not happen, investigators began to focus on the registered owners of the 1991 to 1999 model Toyota Land Cruiser 4-wheel drive identified, and on the 36 men whom callers had identified from the footage. Based on these results, police interviewed Bradley John Murdoch in Broome on the 1st of November 2001, though Lee's descriptions did not immediately connect the case to him, and no DNA sample was collected. On the 17th of May 2002, investigators caught Murdoch's drug-running accomplice, who began to relate details of his connections to the case, and a DNA examination of Murdoch's brother also supported his involvement. Murdoch then disappeared, but on the 22nd of August 2002, he was arrested and tried on an unrelated kidnap and assault charge by the South Australian police. It was an open secret in Western Australia that Bradley Murdoch was a drug runner. His vehicle was designed for long travel, well stocked with survivalist items, and carrying all the latest anti-detection equipment at all times. And he always had his loyal dog, a Dalmatian, by his side. His job may have been a criminal one, but he was very good at it. After hearing about the crime inflicted on the young couple, Bradley knew that he would be a prime suspect for it. First, he was already a criminal, and second, the vehicle in which he was driving was a very close match to Joanne's description. Bradley said when he heard the description of the vehicle that he started to panic, and so he got a friend who worked in a garage to make changes to his van so that it didn't look quite similar to the one that Joanne described. It wasn't enough, however, and police were soon looking for him. They did seem to be intent on pinning this on Brad, even though some of Joanna's description didn't match. The police even showed Joanne pictures of Bradley, and pretty soon her description of Brad started to morph into what she'd seen in the pictures. Even the dog, who she'd initially said was a red heeler, turned into a Dalmatian after she knew that Bradley had a Dalmatian. In 2003, Bradley Murdoch was arrested. He was charged with the murder of Peter Falconio and the deprivation of liberty and aggravated assault of Joanne Lees. Murdoch pleaded not guilty to the charges of murdering Peter and assaulting and trying to kidnap Joanne. Joanne had already identified Murdoch from police photographs shown to her in November 2002 and finally face-to-face during the trial on 18th of October. She also told police that her assailant had tied her hands behind her back using black cable ties, put a sack over her head and forced her into his ute, stating that the person had forced her between the seats and into the rear of his vehicle. Joanne had told the police that she'd escaped from the ute and fled into the dark, hiding under bushes, while Murdoch tried to find her using a torch. As previously said, expert trackers could find no sign of footprints other than those of Joanne and the vicinity. Murdoch was found to have left Alice Springs at the time, which were each consistent with him being at or around Barrow Creek at the time of the murder. Expert testimony presented at the trial indicated that he was the man captured in the CCTV footage at the service station at 12:38 a.m. This indication was later corroborated by Murdoch's own father, as well as his business associate, James Helpy. The police found traces of Murdoch's DNA on a pair of homemade handcuffs used in the attack. This, combined with the DNA match on Lisa's t-shirt, allowed Murdoch to be charged with the murder. The t-shirt DNA was found to be 150 quadrillion times more likely to belong to Murdoch than anyone else. His DNA was also found in the gear stick of the combi in which Peter and Joanne had been travelling, and which, subsequent to the attack on the Stuart Highway, was driven by the perpetrator into the bush. Murdoch's defence argued during the trial that the DNA match could have been due to accidental blood transfer in an Alice Springs Red Rooster restaurant prior to the alleged offence, or it could have simply been planted by people unknown. Other samples were found to be contaminated and were not presented as evidence. Murdoch gave evidence that he had stopped at the restaurant to buy chicken for himself and his dog. During the committal hearing, Louise at one stage mentioned that she and Peter had stopped at Red Rooster. Eyewitnesses claimed that they'd seen Peter at a petrol station 1 week after he went missing. Prosecutor Rex Wild, QC, dismissed these claims, arguing that each account gave conflicting information, in particular about the man's hair colour. He pointed out that the police had followed up various eyewitnesses' accounts, all of which had proven fruitless. Peter's body has never been found, despite the exhaustive attempts by police. On the 13th of December 2005, Murdoch was found guilty by a jury in a unanimous verdict, and he was sentenced to life imprisonment with a non-parole period of 28 years. He was also convicted of other assault-related charges on Joanne. Only after the sentencing was it revealed that Murdoch had previously been acquitted of aggravated sexual assault on a mother and daughter in South Australia some years earlier. Bradley's defence, in turn, exposed Joanne's secret affair with a fellow Briton who had followed her to Sydney and had continued the fling even on the couple's holiday. Joanne, in email evidence presented to the court, had even made plans to meet up with her lover in Berlin on the next portion of the couple's travels. Minimal DNA and a secret love affair that Joanne failed to tell the police about, and at first denied, led many people to believe that Joanne played a part in Peter's disappearance. Another theory that's been thrown into the mix is that Peter may have faked his own death. Police learned that back in Britain, Peter had been fond of talking about numerous scenarios of someone faking their own death. Whilst friends and co-workers thought it was strange, they never gave it much thought until his disappearance. Then they began to strongly consider that it could have been what actually occurred. But what about the bloodstain on the highway? According to police, it was only about a pint of blood, not enough blood loss to be deadly. Could Peter have actually decided to go ahead with a fake death plan? Had he learned of Joanne's affair and thought no time like the present? Could the blood have been a first step in willfully disappearing? But it is strange how Joanne's accounts contain numerous obvious inconsistencies, especially considering that her secret love affair had now been thrust into the open. Bradley Murdoch is still serving time for this crime, and as of 2007, all appeals have been exhausted. He must serve a minimum of 28 years, at which time he'll be 74 years old. The disappearance of Peter and the subsequent arrest of Bradley is still highly debated to this day. Could Peter still be alive? There are many people that still believe so, although personally, I think that Peter was killed on that night. Sightings of him have been reported from all over the globe, but I wouldn't give witness sightings much credibility, to be honest. On the other side of the debate, though, it's been rumoured that Bradley Murdoch agreed to police that he would disclose the location of Peter's body in exchange for a transfer from the harsh conditions of the current prison that he's in to a better facility in Western Australia. Although these claims were said to have taken place in 2007, nothing to such effect has ever taken place. Amid a lot of criticism, Joanne Lees published a book of her own account in 2007 titled No Turning Back. The case remains open, with various developments in the 2 decades that happened. In 2017, the NT news outlet reported that they'd received an anonymous letter from an Australian expat living in London who claimed to have helped Murdoch dispose of Falconio's body. In 2021, Australian authorities reminded the public on the 20th anniversary of the incident that the case still remained open, appealing to anyone who may have leads. In 2022, MLC Frank Pangalo came forward with a plea that the South Australian government offer a $1 million reward for information leading to the discovery of Peter's body, following an email he received from Peter's mother that her son's 50th birthday was approaching. Pangalo stated, "Peter's parents, Peter's brothers Mark, Nicholas and Paul, and their families deserve closure after all these years of grieving and uncertainty." As a result of the news about a potential reward, it was reported in September 2022 that a witness had come forward with information about a ute similar to Murdoch's parked in an unusual position near a bridge about 24 hours after the incident. Obviously, all the information that's come from various witnesses has amounted to no concrete evidence, so these accounts sometimes have to just be taken with a pinch of salt. My opinion, I'm still not 100% convinced that Bradley Murdoch did do it. There is obviously some DNA evidence, which DNA is quite solid evidence, although DNA can be transferred, and if Peter and Joanne came into contact with Bradley Murdoch at the restaurant, the transfer could have happened then. Obviously, CCTV and the fact that he was travelling along that road at the time fits in nicely with Joanne's account, because he would have been there at the time as documented by the CCTV. On the other side of the coin, Joanne did get some things wrong. She said he had a dog, but she said it was a red heeler and it was a Dalmatian, but she was obviously in a state of panic and her memory could have been a little bit disjointed. You could say it was dark and maybe she didn't get a good look at the dog. You could make allowances for that. It is a little bit strange that she hid in a bush for 5 hours with minimal clothing on and she didn't freeze. And also Murdoch's dog, which apparently was highly trained, didn't sniff her out. I'm a bit surprised by that. It is a really tricky one, because why would Murdoch want to kill Peter? What was his reasoning for doing that day? Was it just that he saw them in the restaurant and he followed them, and on the off chance maybe he thought there was something that he could rob? Because there doesn't seem to be an apparent motive for why he did it. He had been convicted of sexual assaults before, so maybe Joanne was a target, although it does seem a bit risky to do all that he did just to assault someone. Part of me does think that he's responsible for it, but then there's another part of me that thinks some things that Joanne said might not add up. This is just my personal opinion. I'm not basing this on anything that I know other than information that I found. To me, it's a tricky one to know what happened. Also, could the fellow Briton that Joanne was having an affair with, the fact that he was in Australia at the same time because he'd followed them over there, could he have had anything to do with this? Could it have been him that got rid of Peter so that he could have a relationship with Joanne? Again, all speculation. Let me know what you think in the comments. Do you think that Joanne maybe had a little bit of memory problems because she was in a heightened state of anxiety? Or do you think there's something more to it? Do you think that Bradley could have done this? Or do you think that somehow he was framed just because he was in the right place at the right time and the police showed her photographs and she made that fit? Could she have seen the truck earlier in the night, and when she was describing a truck, that came into her mind because she'd already seen the truck and the man at the restaurant, so it fit nicely? Let me know your thoughts. Don't forget to like and subscribe. Turn on the little notification button so you get notified when I upload, and I will see you in the next case. Bye for now.